Welcome to the Grow My Salon Business podcast, where we focus on the business side of hairdressing. I'm your host, Antony and I'll be talking to thought leaders in the hairdressing industry, discussing insightful, provocative, and inspiring ideas that matter. So get ready to learn, get ready to be challenged, get ready to be inspired, and most importantly, get ready to grow your salon business. Hey, it's Antony here, and welcome to today's podcast. I often think how there are many people who have a vested interest in the hairdressing industry, with the obvious one being the clients and the stylists and colourists that are behind the chair, and the salon and school owners, the educators, and all the people that are behind the product brands, to name but a few. But then there is also the trade media, and they are involved in many parts of the industry, with the obvious one traditionally being publishing magazines. But these days, they're also heavily involved across all the digital platforms, as well as events, awards, trade shows and education, as well as many other areas of the industry. My guest on today's podcast is Stacey Soble. She is the Director of Brand Content Strategy for Salon Today Magazine, where she has held numerous roles over the last 26 years. In today's podcast, we'll discuss how the role of the hair and beauty media has evolved over the last few years, the impact that the internet and social media have had on trade media, and the trends around salon recruitment, marketing, and changes in industry events, and lots more. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Stacey Soble.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very good.
We were on a panel together many years ago, but it's been a long time since I've seen you.
Exactly. It is a long time. And here we are talking over Zoom. It's amazing how quickly everyone has, embraced this technology. And it's got to be good for the planet as well, though, doesn't it? Because we're not all hopping on planes.
The world's a lot smaller. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And even though there's a little bit of a time lag sometimes with the audio, it's great to have this opportunity to chat with you. So look, Stacey, a lot of my audience won't know who you are because they're not based in the United States. So can we just start off with, I often get my guests to sort of introduce themselves and to sort of do their 2-minute backstory. So who is Stacey Soble? Give us your sort of 2-minute backstory of, how you got started in this industry and what you currently do. And then we'll dig into that.
Well, I am currently the Director of Brand Content Strategy with Salon Today. I've been in the same role, though, for 26 years. It used to be Editor-in-Chief back when we were just a magazine. And now we're a media company that covers the salon industry. And my specialty is salon business. So our sister publication is Modern Salon. They do hair techniques and styles and color techniques. And then Salon Today focuses on how to build a better business, salon business.
Got it. That is the perfect 2-minute backstory. Sometimes I have to cut people off. Okay, so I often think, usually I talk to a lot of hairdressers, and hairdressers all over the world will often talk about how much change there is in the world at the moment and how the hairdressing industry is undergoing, so much change. But, when I knew I was going to talk to you, I was sort of thinking about the changes that media have gone through. And I mean, I've been in the industry for a long time as well. And when you think about the changes that media and all things that come under that, sort of banner, like if I'd spoken to you, 20 years ago or whatever, we would have just been talking about Salon Today as a magazine. But today it is a very different world. So can you just talk to us to start with about how trade magazines, I suppose specifically Salon Today, how they've pivoted and how your role, you just said you've been in this for 26 years, how that has grown and evolved and changed over the years, and what exactly Salon Today is today, because it's a lot more than just a magazine.
In fact, the magazine part is probably becoming the smallest part of what we do. And I, when I went to school, I got my degree in journalism, and I specialized in magazine journalism. And, now that's shrinking, but we're doing, a lot more digitally, a website, we do email newsletters, we do a show like this. We also act like an agency. So we do a lot of sometimes companies hire us to do sponsored content. So we write the content for them because they don't have writers. We're in social media. I just took on another brand called Barbering Today. So that's a whole different world of barbers. I'm still learning that very slowly. It's hard. But a lot of it is social media driven. So we're playing in those spaces too. And that's stuff, we didn't get trained on that. And nobody did, because they didn't have classes like that in school when I went to school. So this is all stuff you have to teach yourself on the job. And sometimes that's challenging.
Yeah, it is. And the social media thing in particular, it is, by the time you do a class on it, the class is out of date. It is just changing so rapidly, so quickly. Or
you think you've conquered one of them and there's something, now we need to learn TikTok, or we've got to focus on something else, and it's a whole new game. So
yeah, exactly. I was just talking to someone, a salon owner, a coaching client, and we were talking about a reel that he was doing for recruitment purposes. And then I said to him, and he's only young, he's a lot younger than me. He's, I don't know, 30 or something. And I said, and now you've got to make sure you get that on TikTok as well. And he just crumbled and put his head in his hands. And he was like, are you joking? Really? Have I got to do TikTok as well? And I'm like, yeah. It's like, when we talk about Facebook, for the last, 5 years, people will often say Facebook's for old people. Well, now they're even starting to say that Instagram is for old people. And if you want to be really on the nail, you have got to be embracing TikTok, because TikTok has evolved dramatically, and it's not just about doing silly dances and pointing at things. It has really, upped the game in terms of that platform, and it's a hugely successful platform. So yet one that I'm to master, to put it mildly.
We're working on it. We work on it too. And it's hard. It's hard to communicate business concepts in a video format sometimes. So.
Yeah, but it's a great discipline though, isn't it? I can be a bit of a waffler, and, that's who I am sometimes. But when you have that discipline of this has got to be 30 seconds or less, and you've got to say something that has a beginning, a middle, and an end in 30 seconds, it's a great discipline to really focus your messaging, isn't it? And I'm not saying I always enjoy having to do that, but it does bring a lot of focus to what you're about. You mentioned how the magazine side of it has become, nowhere near as significant a part of the business as what it was. Do you foresee a day where there won't be a printed magazine?
Oh, I think we're getting to that. Personally, I'd like to hold that out as long as possible, but we're going down to 2 issues next year.
Wow.
So I think, and so we're looking at what can we do in a digital format that's different. We're doing a lot, which is called experiential content. So it's a story that when you open it up on the website, it moves, it has video, it has graphs that morph and change. So it has a lot more interaction.
Yeah.
And you can do polls through it and things like that. So we're looking at creating content like that online that is more interactive. And that will take the place of what, we'll still be talking about the same topics. We'll just be talking about them through a different vehicle.
Sure. So. Okay. So 2 issues. How many issues are you at the moment a year?
4.
Right. Okay. So that is a big, you used to be 12, yeah?
Yeah.
Down to 4.
Used to be 12.
Then down to 2. Okay. Wow. Okay. So that really.
That's been over about 12 years. I think we went down to 9 issues about 10 years ago, and then 6. And
yeah.
So
okay.
It's been slow, but yeah.
So is it young hairdressers that have lost interest in magazines? I still love getting a magazine. I still love a magazine. I still love getting my highlighter. I still love ripping pages out. I still love, taking a magazine with me when I'm on the train so they've got something to read or whatever. Is it a demographic thing that the young audience today simply don't want magazines?
I don't think it's just a demographic. I think it's a time. It has to do with the time that people put into consuming media and how they do it. And they're doing it mostly now through their phones or their iPads rather than, a tangible thing that they hold. I think our industry has held out longer than a lot of others because of the fashion magazines, and people are still in that world. And the interesting thing is when people want you to cover them and they want a feature, they want it in print. But the advertisers don't always, they want to reach people in other ways. So people still respect that credibility of the print publication, but we have to have the sponsorship dollars at the same time. So, and they're finding more value in going at people through social media, through our paid programs that are digital. So.
Yeah. Okay. It's interesting. I mean, I haven't been, active behind the chair in a salon for, 20 years now. But when I look back 20 years ago, hairdressers wanted to get their work in print.
And they still do.
They still do. Right. Okay. But social media has dramatically changed that whole landscape, because now anyone can get their work out there. And I suppose what I'm leading to is saying that I often wonder whether young hairdressers today are not that bothered about getting it in magazines, although you've just said that that's not the case, that they're not that bothered about getting it in magazines. They're not that bothered even about winning awards necessarily, because their, their endorsement is in the form of getting more likes and more followers and, more views and more engagement on social media. I mean, talk to us about that. Is that your sort of, gut feeling as well or not?
Yes, I don't think that the person who's always an Insta star is maybe the best stylist to go to in town.
Yeah.
But there is a skill to being famous on social media. But I think what's really valuable, at least for my audience who are owners, is how do you turn that into money in the salon? You can have a great page and you can have lots of followers, but if they're not clients and they're not coming in and they're purchasing your services, you've got to transition that into making money, or you work for a brand, a brand or a brand you on.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, again, if we went back 5-10 years ago, there was a lot more vanity metrics about how many followers I've got, how many likes I've got, etc., how many fans, whereas now people have sort of, they're less into that vanity metric of having all these different followers and are more interested in
who's following you. That's what's important.
Exactly. Yeah. And are they engaging, and are they potential clients, and are they spending money? And if you're really focused like that, if you're behind the chair, the reality is that you can have a really strong business with 300 or 400 people that are actively engaged with you on social media, as opposed to thinking you've got to have 500,000 or something. So, yeah. Now, another thing I wanted to talk about, and that's part of that evolvement of the media magazine sort of side of things, is that there's now a lot more events that magazines and the media are very much involved with. I know you have an event which we were talking about before we started recording, data-driven conference. Talk to us about that, because a lot of people won't know what that is. It's a young event. Even in the US, it's a young event. Most people outside the US wouldn't have heard of it, but it's a fascinating event. I think there's a lot of, great ideas, and they're great takeaways for salon owners anywhere.
Well, it's about 7 years old now. It's very unique in the fact that we are focusing on the data that helps helping people understand the data that drives their salon and how to harvest that to make your decisions, your business decisions. So it revolves around some key metrics like average ticket, productivity, client counts, client retention. And so a lot of the content is around driving those statistics in your business and making them better, making your average ticket higher, getting more clients in the door, retaining your staff. But we also harvest information from a competition we do that's a salon business competition called the 200. Mm-hmm. So a lot of it is about data and statistics. They give us their information on their revenue and things that are going on in their business, but they also write essays about some of the challenges they're facing and what they're doing to. So a lot of our content is driven around that. So it changes every year based on the challenges that people are facing the salon. But most of the speakers are other salon owners, or companies. Some of our technology companies have speakers that address some of those issues. And you think data, you think it can be kind of dry and dull, but it's really addressing those topics, but just doing it through a data viewpoint. So, you can judge your own business and say, okay, this salon's doing this much on average ticket. Where am I on that scale? So it's kind of identifying, where are you weak? Where can you improve? Where are you strong? What can you share to help other people? So it's kind of a big sharing of other ideas from other salon owners.
Okay. And I think that is something, with the focus on data, that is so badly needed, because one of the things that I've noticed in the industry all over the world is that getting reliable data, getting accurate, reliable data from salon owners, no matter where you are, is often fairly vague. And, as you sort of alluded to, I think it was before we were recording, as an industry, we've not always been that quick on the uptake with technology. And even when salons have become computerized, front desk point of sale systems, unfortunately, there's still a fairly high percentage of them that basically use it as a glorified cash register. And so understanding the metrics, understanding the data that sits behind all that is important. So yeah, I think that's a fantastic conference. I haven't been to it yet myself, but I do want to get to that one day. So with the conference this year, I know you're back into a live situation. What have you? We
have been for the last 2 years.
Oh, the last 2 years. Okay. Yeah. So post COVID, I always got the feeling that before COVID, that events were changing anyway, regardless of whether that was like an event that was like an industry show like ISSE or Long Beach or whatever. That event seemed to be a bit lost. People were sort of trying to reimagine them. And then COVID came along and it reimagined them for us. And sort of looking at what's happening now in the industry all over the world, people are sort of tentatively getting back in. They're putting a toe in the water for the event thing. But, as we said at the beginning of this, we've got very used to being online. We've got very used to jumping on a Zoom call. And the internet's been a game changer. And I think COVID has really accelerated a lot of these trends and, made it possible for people to realize, well, actually, I can't afford to go or can't afford the time to go, but I'm very happy doing it online because that's what I had to do when COVID was happening. So talk to us about that. What sort of trend do you see happening in terms of, events in the salon industry at the moment?
Well, and we saw that we did do a virtual data-driven the year in 2020. And then in the fall of 2021, we did a small live event. And then last year we did one, and we planned for the audience capacity of what we had pre-pandemic, and we sold out a month before. We've never sold out of a conference before. So we kind of were seeing the opposite. We were seeing that people were kind of hungry to get together, maybe not at a big trade show, but at a show where they're actually networking with their peers and spending time sharing ideas with them. So we also brought the Salon Today 200 awards into that event. So that also made it that much richer. And that audience, we didn't set out to create that social format for them, but it's become that over the years. They become friends with, people enter that year after year. They become friends with each other. They form their own network groups. They support one another now, and it's a big idea sharing forum. So we married those two things together, and we sold out of both the Salon Today 200 award program and Data Driven last year.
Fantastic.
About 6 months.
Yeah.
So we've got a bigger space this year. We're also doing it in Nashville, which in The US is a, the country
Music
hall of
center.
fame.
Yeah.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a very live, energetic city. And I think sometimes choosing the city is also just as important as what the content is you're putting on stage.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't know of other events that have been in Nashville. So it sounds like a great place to have it. So is it the social thing that people are wanting to get together more than to go to a trade show to buy stuff or go to learn stuff? Is it more about that I need to be with my people?
I think it's that combined with getting real information that's going to help you do your job better, run your business more strongly. I think it's the combination of those two things. But obviously the networking was a big part of it. I mean, we're seeing, numbers at things like Serious Business and Inner Coiffure, those are going up as well. But that networking component is really important.
Good. Okay, that is interesting. All right, you mentioned before Salon Today top 200 salons, and I know that is a big part of what you personally are heavily involved in. Talk to us about what that means for our non-US audience who won't know what it is.
Yeah, it's been, when we do have salons from out of the country that enter and are honored, but it is a salon business competition. It has changed a lot through the years. When we first started, it was strictly about growth. So we were measuring growth sales from one year to the next, and that percentage of growth and how well they did. Then we have the recession in 2008. We kind of had to change the competition because for anybody to experience any growth that year would have been great. So we started looking at best business practices. So we have competition, we have 10 different best business practices, from environmental sustainability to client retention, technology, philanthropy, employee education, salon culture, salon leadership. I don't know that I'm going to get all 10 off the top of my head, but those are the different categories.
Yeah.
So we still look at growth, but we look at those two. You can enter either. Because also, as a salon gets bigger, when they get in the multi-million-dollar gross sales categories, it's hard to drive that percentage exponentially. So, 1% is a good growth, as opposed to some of these salons are hitting 20% growth, but they're small. So it's easy to do when you're small. So we're looking at all those other things that all add up to be a strong business, and we're looking at those different categories. Yeah. And then we did have to change, of course, we had to change that during the pandemic, because at least in the United States, different states were closed for different lengths of time. So it wasn't an even playing field. We couldn't look at gross sales because salons in California were closed for 9 months and salons in Georgia were closed for 6 weeks. It wasn't fair to judge on that. Of course. So then we were just kind of looking at recovery, pandemic recovery, and what are the ideas that were coming out of that. So every year the competition has changed based on what is happening in the world. So this year we asked, our essay question was about what unique challenges are you facing these days and how are you overcoming them? So that was the essay, the big essay question.
So what were some of the trends? Give me some examples of what came out of that.
Yeah, we are still seeing, at least in the United States and Canada, staff retention is the biggest one. Recruitment and retention, hanging on to your team members. And I don't think that's probably different around the world. I mean, a lot of businesses are having that same struggle.
Definitely.
But we're also seeing some unique things like schedule flexibility, because staff have kind of the upper hand now. They're demanding things that they've wanted for a long time, like flexibility in their schedule. And so owners are looking at going to 3-day weekends, or not forcing every stylist to work on a Saturday, which used to be the thing, which is also kind of matching the way that the world has changed. Now that a lot more people work from home, they have a little more flexibility in their schedules. Like I can get my hair done on a Wednesday afternoon, whereas before I used to always want a Saturday appointment or an evening appointment. So That's changing, but then owners have to kind of understand you can't lean so far that you're giving away the profitability in your business. You can't just close on Saturday because nobody wants to work on Saturday, because that's still, it could be in your community, still the desired day that clients want the appointment.
Yeah.
So those are the two trends right now. And then burnout is probably mental wellness, and burnout is the other thing we're seeing salons trying to address with their team members. Their team members are burned out. They're struggling with mental wellness, and a lot of salons are finding unique ways to bring. We've done some stories about some salons that have brought, a counselor in once a month and just had paid for open appointments. They're there for a couple of hours. You can book appointment to talk about anything, any mental issues you need to talk about, or any personal struggles you need to talk about. But salons are looking at unique ways of providing those services for their people.
That's fantastic. And what about the recruitment side of things? Because yes, that is a global issue. What sort of innovative things have you seen that people have been coming up with to get around that?
Well, you actually touched on it earlier. It's changed from, putting a classified ad in now doesn't work so much in your community. It's about using your social media to talk about the culture in your salon and why it's a desirable place to work. So you're not just using your social media to market to potential clients. You're using it to market to potential salon members, and putting together some clever, fun video with your staff and why they love to work there, interviewing each one of them with a quote about why it's so great to work there, and putting that together in a video format. And we've had salons that have done that, have turned to social media and gotten, 12 new resumes in the door where they were not getting anything through traditional advertising. Then, we have a lot of, I'm sure you have them too, like sites like Indeed. Those are still places to post jobs, but there are some salon specific ones now too, and kind of focusing on those. But it's really, instead of a salon telling the world what they want and the quality of the thing, you need to now talk about why you want to be a place people want to work.
Right.
You're really marketing to them instead of just throwing out a job and saying, this is what we want. We want someone that wants to work these days and has these skills. Now you need to talk about why you're a place that people want to work.
Yeah, there was I wish I knew who'd said it. I heard it on another podcast. Someone said it, and they said something. As soon as they said it, it was like, that's just the perfect, way to describe this. They said, as a salon owner, I used to advertise for staff. He said, now I have to recruit staff. And I thought, yeah, that was what they said. You used to advertise, you get someone walking the door. Now you can advertise till your head falls off. Nothing's going to happen. You have to actively recruit people. And it's coming at it from a different mindset because, as you said, the employee is going, well, when I use the word employee in inverted commas, that they have the upper hand, so to speak, about, well, there's a shortage of people and I don't want to work like that anymore. I want to work like this. So if you're not going to accommodate that, then, I'll go elsewhere. So there is this, flexibility happening. But when I often ask salon owners about flexibility, and I say, because that is the buzzword now, I think if you had to have one word that, described what Gen Z or what hairdressers want today, that sits behind why there is so many salon suites and booth renters, et cetera, the word that comes up consistently is flexibility and control. I want more flexibility. I want more control. I want more autonomy. But when you dig in and try and get them to really define, well, what does that mean by flexibility? It really seems to just always comes down to, I want to choose the hours that I work and the days that I work. Do you see anything that is more innovative that addresses that flexibility issue, and all the salons that put submissions in for the, Salon Top 200?
Well, I don't think split shifting is a new concept. It's been around for a few years, but we're seeing a lot more people getting more inventive about that. Looking at that chair as how many hours is that chair booked? It doesn't matter who's actually the person behind the chair. So, if somebody is better at mornings and someone's better at afternoons, can they share that chair? And you as a salon owner are trying to look at every available hour that you need to book and how to get them booked. And that's the way you need to do it. But some of the really innovative things that we're seeing, and I've only seen a few salons do it, and I don't know how well it would work in every market, is they're like prime bookings. So the time that are really popular, maybe a Friday afternoon or Saturday, they're charging the client more for those appointments than for the appointments on Tuesdays. So it's the same service. It could be the same technician, but that particular hour is more valuable in the salon. So, and that's the kind of thing that you have to use data and technology to find out, because every salon's different and every market is different. So figuring out what are those valuable hours and how can you shift the clients that are, for someone that works a 40-hour work week, it might be worth it to me to pay more to come in on a Saturday or Sunday. But for someone who has a flexible schedule, works from home or just has more flexibility in their schedule, they're happy, on the Tuesday morning. So that's one of the things that we're seeing that's valuable. But then coming back to the flexibility for the staff members, we're seeing salons that are doing 3-day work weekends. So the stylists are working 10-hour days instead of 8-hour days. And I think that depends on the state and where you can do that and when you can do that. But they're willing to do that and then have a 3-day weekend. And that weekend might be Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, but they're looking at that. So that's some of the other things we're seeing with scheduling.
Yeah, it was interesting. I talked to someone on the podcast 3 or 4 months ago now, and I think she was in Illinois, but in a small town, like population 8,000 people or something, so it wasn't a big, metropolis. And she was doing that idea. And there's an example. The hairdressing industry often think of things and go, oh my gosh, you couldn't do that. The prime time pricing. But that's what Uber is. That's what every hotel in the world is. That's what airlines are. You pay for prime time, like school holidays and Christmas, etc. The price of flights, everything goes up. 5 o'clock in the afternoon, Uber's going to cost you a lot more than it's going to cost you at, say, 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning. So there's nothing wrong with thinking like that. But it's interesting. When I was talking to this lady, and I think she was in Illinois on the podcast, she gave me an example of how after COVID, they were so busy that they put an email out to their clients saying, look, we're going to open Monday, but it is at double price. So it's 100% loading. And they sold out like that. So it's interesting. So many hairdressers are frightened of putting their prices up. They're frightened of thinking like this. And the client, they just want it done. They want the convenience. And what might be a lot of money for us as hairdressers isn't necessarily seen as a lot of money for the client. They're happy to pay it to get in and, get what they want when they want it, so to speak. So, yeah, some very interesting lessons there. That is very much a marketing thing. I wanted to dig into that a little bit with the stamp, the Salon Today. So I didn't realize it was called, that stamp stood for Salon Today Annual Marketing Program. I don't know what I thought it stood for. I just didn't realize it stood for anything. I just thought it was a great name. So the initiatives that you feature in, that people send in, these are some of our latest marketing initiatives. Again, I think I said it to you before we were recording that I always see some brilliant ideas in there, and they come from all over the country, oftentimes small salons, not always, a salon in a big metropolis. Any particular, trends that you've seen that you thought were particularly inspiring?
Yeah, well, this year we saw a lot. Our biggest entry was for employee recruitment, and it kind of dovetails what we were talking about with the challenges earlier. It used to, last year we covered a lot of like, how did salons market about the pandemic and how are they reopening procedures and their safety precautions. So that was kind of a trend last year. And this year the trend is really marketing pieces to take to career fairs or just to get out there, to even to give to your staff to give out. And then we had one salon that actually did a brochure for social media training for their own staff. So it was like tips on one side and things that we want you to always include when you do a post. And it came with a class, but they were doing a marketing piece around that was strictly just for their staff. So there's a lot more internal marketing than there has been previously. It's been very interesting, but we cover a lot of categories. So we covered, digital marketing. So we judge blogs, we judge websites, we judge social media posts, social media campaigns, like all over, like campaigns that are involved with a big brand sponsor and how you adapt that for your salon. So we have and then we have kind of an other category, and every year there are things in there that are new that we haven't even thought of as a category that were interesting. So I think one of my favorite stamp ideas was that one little, kind of talking about the salon you were talking about, that one little tiny small town. I think this was somewhere in Pennsylvania, and they bought a Starbucks gift card and they posted on social media with the barcode. And they said, we want to thank our clients, so use this and then pass it on. So they were actually holding up their phone with the social media post of the barcode for the gift card, and they would buy their clients a coffee. And then it was kind of an honor system. They weren't supposed to buy more than one coffee for themselves, but then they treated a number of their clients that way as a reward. And it was a social media post, but I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, very clever. How many did they do? Do you know?
I think it was like $150 gift card, and they probably had 70 people use it. But it was kind of the goodwill that generated, and it got people talking about it in town. And then one year we had another owner that did a treasure hunt in town. So he'd post clues. It's like, how can you use social media to really not just talk at your audience, but engage them to participate in something that's fun? Yeah. So he would hide things around town and post a clue, and people were going all over looking for it. But it was getting a lot of engagement on his social media pages and a lot of looks because people were waiting for the next clue, and it was just fun.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Good. That's great. Very clever. Okay. What about business models? Are you seeing any? I know this is not particularly your remit, but doing all this stuff with stamp and data-driven, etc. Over the last 10 years, the sort of salon suite thing has just exploded. Yeah. What are you seeing in terms of that and trends? Are you seeing that just continuing? Has it plateaued? Well, are you seeing new business models come about?
I'd say we're seeing it morph. Obviously, the suites are still growing, but we're seeing a lot of salons doing something that's called a hybrid. So, we have one salon that's in the 200 a lot that has one commission-based salon, and 2 doors down, they have a rental thing. So basically their employees kind of work through that system when they've kind of maxed their capacity in the commission-based salon and they really want that independence. Instead of losing them to a suite, they're transitioning them over to their own solo operations. And then they still get the benefit of the education that the commission-based salon brings in. Those artists can still come over from the solo booths and get the benefit of that. Okay. And the benefit of the overall marketing and technology and things like that. So we're seeing these kind of hybrid concepts that was one where they're independent, but we're seeing them in the same salon too. So there are salons that have a mix of commission-based stylists and solo artists. And, each has different benefits and opportunities, and it's figuring out who works in which situation the best and meeting both of those.
Yeah.
I think it's challenging. As an owner, that's a really challenging business to run.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you end up with two different sets of rules. There's different there's different rules depending on who you are, an employee or, a renter. What about cooperatives or shared ownership things? Do you see any of those sort of things happening?
Yeah, we actually had a session on this at Data Driven last year, and it was succession planning, what to do with your salon when you're ready to step down.
Yeah.
But we had a lot of different models, from simply finding another owner to buy it to identifying people on your team who would like to be part owners and helping groom them over a matter of years to get to that point where they can buy a salon. So there's a salon in Pennsylvania called Lords and Ladies that has 7 or 8 different well-established businesses, and that owner has now turned this into, a franchisee opportunity for his employees, where they have each of those is now owned by a former employee of one of the salons, and they're going to continue to grow that way. So we're seeing a lot of interesting things of part ownership, stock options for employees, and these different interesting hybrid part ownership arrangements.
Yeah, well, there are interesting ways of trying to lock people in. I've done some podcasts with different people who have got that sort of model in their business. And so it's giving people a slice of the pie, and it locks them in. And again, it's one of those things that it's not a new business model. I mean, accountancy firms and architectural firms and legal firms have done that forever by making people partners. And it seems to me that it is something that's well worth looking into, and I know that there are plenty of salons out there that are doing that. I'm just wondering if you were getting the feeling that was, becoming more prevalent or not. Doesn't sound like it necessarily is.
Well, we're doing more stories about it. I don't know if that people are just more interested in learning about it, or it's actually we're seeing more examples of it. But we're certainly seeing more people willing to talk about it. And that's part of it too. Sometimes people weren't willing to talk about it. They wanted to see if it was going to be successful before they publicly talked about it. So, and that's the same thing with the hybrid. I know a couple salons that are trying that hybrid thing, but they're not ready to talk about it in the story yet.
Yeah, so. Sure. Okay. You and I have both got children who are Gen Z in the workforce, 20 somethings. I'm not sure if yours are Gen Z. They might have just escaped the other out there, but it might be just the other.
One that's Z and one that's a Y.
Right. Okay. So what I want to ask you about, because it's interesting now that I have, Gen Z children in the workforce, they are questioning the way things are. Do you know what I mean? Like if I went back, I don't know, 10, 20 years or whatever, you just took every opportunity, you worked for free, you worked for nothing, you worked late night, and there was that feeling of you pay your dues. Right. And this generation, and so now that you're a parent looking at kids that are that age, you maybe look at it in a different way. I mean, I always say to my daughter, I say, okay, well, that's up to your generation now to change that and still enable the business to work and be profitable. Do you know what I mean? Because you've always got to find that balance. I suppose what I was going to ask you was, what are you seeing about Gen Z specifically and the demands and the initiatives that they're creating in the workplace? You mentioned, for example, before that one about the salons that were bringing in a counselor to talk about mental health. Can you imagine 10, 15 years ago, if you'd have suggested that, people would have looked at you like you had two heads. Whereas now it's like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. Along with, yeah, you don't have to work Saturdays. That's fine as well. Are you seeing any other particular things about Gen Z that are positive for the industry? We grapple with them, but ultimately they're positive.
I think that we're seeing a lot of and it all goes in hand to this whole recruitment thing again. But we're seeing a lot of that generation wants to work for a company that they're proud to be associated with, that stands for something, that is maybe environmentally sustainable. And they can say, I work for a salon that supports this. But we're seeing that with us. I don't know if they have Green Circle around the world, but here we have Green Circle, and we do a lot with them. But it's becoming a recruiting badge of pride to be able to say, I'm an environmentally sustainable salon, and this is what we're doing. This, or here's the philanthropies we support, and that you're going to be a part of. Yeah, they want kind of about, they're willing to give up some of that money to be associated with an organization they're proud of. They want something that has a strong culture. They want to have a feeling that they belong, but they're willing to work for that. I think they're willing to work hard for that. Yeah. So it's finding those people that are your tribe and bringing them in and feeding them. But they also want to know how they're doing. They want a lot of feedback. How are they doing in their jobs? Let me know when I'm doing something well. Let them know when they have some opportunity or improvement in places. They want that feedback. So that's important as well, which as an owner, that's a harder job to do. You have to be a leader. But they want that. Yeah, they do. They want leadership, don't they? Yeah. And that's very interesting. The whole things you brought up then about the environment and philanthropy and etc. They want to know that they're part of an organization that cares at a deeper level. So, okay. It's just one thing I did want to ask you before we start to wrap up is that when you look outside the US market, and I don't know how often you get the opportunity to do that, do you see anything outside the US market, the hair and beauty market, outside of America, and you think, gosh, it'd be good if we did more of that? I've had a couple of, I've had a few opportunities where I've gotten to see inside a little bit more. I was one of the judges for Forrest's fund that they did recently, where they granted people money for things. So I was reading business ideas and plans for people. I think particularly in the UK, there are a lot of demands for benefits that you all pay for staff members that are not required in the US. I think we're getting further along in that, where people are. For a long time, salon staff members didn't get traditional medical benefits. So there are a lot of requirements now where they do have to provide things, but then there are also a lot of salons that are trying to do that better. But that's something I've always admired about salons in other countries, that they're able to do that. And how do you, there's not a lot of profitability. The profitability margin on salon businesses can be very small. So it's, how do you create that opportunity? Yeah, well, I used to wonder that as well. And it's simply a matter of the commissions are smaller. So yes, outside of the US, and I weren't sure where you were going to go with that question, but outside of the US, Europe, UK, Australia, there's just a lot more legislation about what you have to give people. It's not even a conversation in terms of holiday pay, dental, medical, sick leave, et cetera, But it's not a case of that eats into the profit. It's that the profit is hopefully still there, but the percentages that you pay people are smaller in terms of the direct commission, because they have to be smaller to accommodate all these other add-ons that you have to give people. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Last thing then, what future opportunities or challenges do you see for the industry? I think opportunities are still going to be that client that loyal client you have coming to your salon. Are you meeting all of their beauty needs? And are you doing it smartly? We were talking about earlier about anecdotes, and I have very few eyelashes. They're very small. I used to get lash extensions. But because of the job that I'm in, I happen to talk to the technician a lot about her job and what she does and what she doesn't like to do and what she does like to do. So she's literally gluing these eyelash extensions onto my eyelashes one by one, and this takes several hours. And she's talking about, the salon just brought in a new service to lock in color and protect it. And it's like a $30 add-on to your color. I said, she's like, I don't want to put, like, these people are coming in, they're spending a lot for color service. I don't want to try to sell them another $30 something. And I said, you're looking at it the wrong way. I said, I'm literally paying you to glue individual lashes on my eyes. And like, don't look at my pocketbook through the view of your own. Think about, what does that client need? If she's already paying $150 to come in and get great color, to have $30 to make it look great until she comes in the next time and not lose the color, that you don't think that's worth it? You need to sell that as an insurance policy.
Exactly.
This is an insurance policy for your color. It's going to help you look. So I think that and I do think that this has been a positive from the pandemic. We were talking about raising prices earlier. It has forced people to raise prices, but it's something we should have been doing. And a lot of people like you and myself have tried to coach people that you're not charging the value that you're worth. And I think the pandemic did help people realize how valuable they were to their clients. And now you need to start charging people for it. And just realizing that client that comes, there are other things that are worth it to her to pay for. Just don't short side yourself,
Exactly. Just out of interest, did she know who you were?
Oh yeah, she knew who I was.
Oh, she knew who you were. Right. Okay. Yeah, that's unbelievable. Okay. Well, it is believable. It happens all the time. All right.
I don't write off my salon services, but I could, because we talk business the whole time. So.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's kind of my opportunity to see inside the salon, and I'm fortunate that I'm able to enjoy that environment while I'm there, that I'm writing about every day, and really pick their brain.
Yeah, exactly. I love being a client. I go to different salons all the time, and it's such a great insight. In fact, it's one of those things I always tell salon owners, that it's often the best, investment they can make is to be a client elsewhere regularly, go to different salons, because it's great to know what it feels like to be a client, and get good service, and sometimes not get good service, and look at where the opportunities are for, oh my gosh, if that person had just mentioned, as you just said, that example, about an extra service that would lock in your color, that you would love that because it's your frustration, and you wouldn't mind paying the extra $30 as long as it was, done. So yeah, good point.
But she doesn't want to talk about it to me, because she doesn't want to push another thing on me to spend money on. So
exactly. Yeah.
You got to think about it from your client's perspective.
Exactly.
Not your own.
Okay. Well, on that note, we need to wrap up. Where can people connect with you on Instagram or social media channels or websites? Where would you like to direct people?
Well, Salon Today has all those things. So you can follow us on Salon Today, but you can also reach out to me. I'm also old school. I love email. So I'm at Stacey, STACEY, period, SOBLE at bobit.com. But you can also reach out through Salon Today's Facebook page or Instagram. And we don't have a TikTok yet, but we're going to get there. But we have LinkedIn. So all those things.
Cool. Okay. Now I will put those, I will put all those addresses on the show notes for today's podcast. I know I said to you before we were recording, I said that sometimes we speak the same language, but sometimes we'll say little things that, people that are in the UK, Australia, whatever, won't know what she means by that. So I'm going to tell you something now. People in Australia and the UK now think that your name is Stacey, period, because we don't use that word in that context. Period is full stop. We say full stop. So I know when I'm in America and I say full stop, they go, what? I go, full stop, Stacey, full stop, like Soble, like they don't use that word period in that context. So there you go. You've learned something as well. So
that's interesting. I did not know that. So
I get caught out.
I wouldn't even know what you meant if you said that to me.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I would
No,
know that
exactly.
dot
Yeah.
name.
Yeah.
I had
It's
no idea.
full stop. It's like comma, full stop, whereas your comma, period. Like, no, don't know what she means. Okay, well, if you're listening to this podcast with Stacey Soble and enjoyed it, then do me a favor, take a screenshot on your phone and share it to your Instagram stories. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a rating and review on the Apple Podcast app. So to wrap up, Stacey, thank you for being on this week's Grow My Salon Business podcast. It's been really good having this opportunity to get your
Very welcome.
overview. Cheers.
And I do want people to know that on Salon Today, I would say .com. Would you say full stop com?
No,
How would
you
you
see,
say
we'd go, yeah, salontoday.com. Yeah.
.com.
So yeah, got
We
it.
do have, you can sign up for a complimentary email newsletter, and we do have our issues, digital editions of our issues online that are free to look at. So
Perfect.
direct people to look there.
Good. Fantastic. Okay. Thanks, Stacey.
Thank you so much. Love being on the show.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast. If you'd like to connect with us, you'll find us at growmysalonbusiness.com or on Facebook and Instagram at growmysalonbusiness. And if you enjoyed tuning into our podcast, make sure that you subscribe, like, and share it with your friends. Until next time, this is Antony Whitaker wishing you continued success.